Hello, everybody. We're about to get started. And here we are. Welcome to the Blender Noob Show.
Blender Noobs, noobs.
Newbie. It's Newbie Tuesday, but it's actually Saturday, but it still works.
It's always Newbie Tuesday when it comes to us and Blender.
Yes. This is a little unscripted, but here we go. What is this? This is kind of the second season, right?
Yeah, I know. We did a soft opening and now we're going for the real opening. I think is kind of what this is all about.
Yeah. So anybody just jumping into the show, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you're watching this, my good friend Mike, which we'll do some introductions in just a moment. We started a little idea called the Blender Noob Show a couple months back, and we did 4 episodes, just testing the water, as you will, to try and see if this is something we wanted to keep doing. Both of us have an interest in learning to model in Blender 3D, which is an awesome free to play software. And Mike is a little bit more experienced than me, but we took what we learned, and we're hoping to continue to evolve the show. We have a lot of big ideas going forward. Let's do some introductions real quick.
Perfect. Why don't I mean, I can kick that off and then we can go to the checkpoint professor. But so I am Melting Face 3D. Been big fan and friend of Gabe's for, oh gosh, I guess it's over a decade now, isn't it? We've been collaborating, went to school together, graduated together. It's been a long time. It's 2021. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a little while, but we studied together. We completed our undergrad together.
Yep. Took a couple of divergent paths. I have been working in I've been working within the e-learning for like for over 10 years now, since 2009. I've been working first it was Convergence Training, and now it's Vector Solutions, just creating really great 3D industrial training content, and now it's actually content that spans multiple industries, bringing 3D to that market and making it the best in the business. That's what we've been doing, which has been a huge learning experience. But that's my 3D background. It's not necessarily within games or movies, but the same disciplines, the same things that I do there. But that's my 3D background. But yeah, passionate about telling stories, modeling, texturing, rendering, diving into some animations. Blender has rejuvenated some passions and some stuff that's kind of got me really excited. So this has been a lot of fun learning and diving into a whole different program that is only getting better, and like every week, every month, it seems like there's some new cool feature that they're coming out and just making it awesome.
That's awesome. So I'm super stoked as well. So my name is Checkpoint Professor, also known as Gabriel Olson. I'm a full-time professor at the University of Utah, where I teach game design. I teach a lot of art classes and level design classes, and general game design as well. And my background is in games. So I spent nearly a decade with Disney Interactive working on video games there. A lot of Disney Infinity, Toy Story 3, a lot of kids games. I actually really like kids games. But I had a lot of fun. Kind of like Mike, we studied together. I spent a lot of time in Maya making 3D assets. Maya was actually our game engine interface editor in all the Disney games as well. And so, yeah, currently I teach a lot of Maya at the University of Utah. I've been wanting to dig into Blender for a long time. We've kind of discussed that. And so the Blender Noobs podcast is a way for both Mike and I to keep talking about it. So that's my background. Welcome to the Noob Show. I can talk really quick a little bit about our general plan going forward with our agenda. Good idea. Yeah, Mike and I are going to hop in. Excuse me, Melting Face. 3D and I
Yes.
are going to hop in and kind of talk a little bit about Blender in general. Maybe any news that has come out, anything fun that popped up on the radar that week or the last time we talked. And then the goal after that is to each show off some projects that we are both working on.
Yeah, and which is a lot of fun. Like for me, I love that we're going to um, maybe not force ourselves, but it's going to be a really great way just to keep ourselves honest, continue to improve and grow within 3D and within Blender, and just go through some discovery because when you are used to one program, for me it was 3D Studio Max. I went and did Max on my work, um, and then jumped into a different program. The fundamentals are definitely the same, but you become a noob again in a lot of different ways, and uh, it's a lot of fun that way.
Awesome. So we will be throughout the week. We're going to show off some of the cool stuff we've learned. What I like about this is what I'm hoping is kind of like this is just a fun kind of podcast style chat with Mike and I talking about what we're working on. But for those who are really interested in Blender 3D, we're going to be talking about the new tools and things that help us learn through that time as well. So there should be a lot of nuggets of education there for anyone interested in Blender 3D, especially those who are just starting out.
Absolutely, and if there's any non-noobs out there that want to scream and yell at us for doing something silly and stupid, well, that's fine too.
Yeah, or if you want to come join us one week and share some of your Blender 3D knowledge, that is also an option. We wouldn't
Oh,
kick you out.
absolutely. One of the other aspects I think could really be beneficial about our podcast is that we come from, like we said, different backgrounds. It's the 3D base, but Checkpoint has a games background as well as a professor background, where I come from the e-learning space as well as 10 plus years in like art management. So we could have some very fun and interesting discussions even outside of the 3D space, which I think it would be really, really relevant, just with our backgrounds.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. So going forward, the plan for today, this will be a shorter episode. Typically, we plan on going about an hour and a half. That gives a half hour for me to talk about my project, half hour for Mike to talk about his project, and then 15 minutes to a half hour for our intro, so we can kind of do a little. I think in the business, Mike, they call it housekeeping.
Yes.
Do a little
Yep.
housekeeping in the beginning. Make sure our house is tidy and organized.
Yeah, and go through what's been on our minds. Obviously we're doing virtual work. How has that affected the game industry? How has that affected the e-learning industry? How's that affected, Gabe, you're teaching students virtually. That's, I'm sure, a challenge. Just talking about what's going on, what's on our minds, what's Blender doing, uh, all that kind of stuff
Yeah,
is fair game.
we're gonna sprinkle a little life into the discussion. That's what we're saying.
I think so.
So without further ado, why don't we just jump into things? Mike has been working on this amazing fire hydrant, and if you want to see it in its earlier stages, it will be on this channel, the Blender Noob YouTube channel. Going forward, we'll make sure all those are released in order so you can see the progress of the projects we're working on too. During the first one is actually a really great episode because Mike teaches me how to basically navigate within Blender. And it's something
Yep.
I actually need to go back and review as I continue on with my project this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to share my screen, Gabe?
Yeah, share your screen and I will stretch it on out.
Okay. Let me know when ready.
Yep, I'm one moment, my good friend. All right, we've got you. All right, we've got you full screened, buddy.
Cool. So just so what we're seeing right now is the low poly version of this fire hydrant. I did a more modern fire hydrant. This is the untextured. But I will show the the Blender Eevee real time textured version. But the genesis of this was episode 1. We were like, okay, let's just talk about Blender in general. And Gabe came up with the fantastic idea of giving us one of the assignments that he gives to his students, and that's just to model a fire hydrant. And so my goal ended up being, let's do a high poly, do a low poly, unwrap, bake, texture, and then bring it back into Blender. And so slowly but surely, as things have been happening, that's what we've done. And so I've learned a ton. One of the things that I do want to touch on after I go through the pipeline of this is, Gabe. I'm not sure if you can see, but the uh, the viewport settings are a little bit different. They have some pretty interesting, like highlights and stuff. There's some shadowing, there's some like AO, and so it actually Blender has a really cool way to do some just. It has great viewport displays, and
So
so
it's a nice
uh,
real-time renderer.
yeah, so I guess just to go over that because it's one of those interesting little Blender tips that like I've learned about recently is wi- within Blender, you have your display information up here, but what you can do, what you can do to get some better viewport um, display goodness to go to go up to the upper right, and you have your viewport shading, you have your um, the material preview and then the rendered preview. But what you can do is go to your viewport shading solid view. Um, you can choose at that point you can choose either a matte cap or a studio. You just gotta you know go through here and choose what you like to look at. Let's do this right here. But the other options are cavity and shadow, and actually I turn those on. So this is kind of the default view that you would normally get with the solid view. But to get it to look a little bit nicer, you can turn on shadows, and then you can mess with that. So it's just viewport shadows. And then the other thing is cavity. And that actually is what that does is it's like a cavity map, and it just highlights the edges uh, like of the models, and then you can have this really kind of nice kind of display. And this is actually something that a lot of people use with booleans, is because you can see like the edges, and it starts looking really nice. So that's what I did there. Um,
So what's the
to
benefit?
show
What's the benefit to that? Does that help out with the process, or does it just kind of help you look for any imperfections in the model? What's the
Yeah, so especially with booleans, that will actually help with looking at some like render errors in the model with like overlapping faces, some weird edges. So that actually does help in that aspect. Plus, it is just nicer to look at, and it's like easier on the eyes.
it does
You
look
know,
cool?
there.
Yeah,
So yeah, you can kind of get it's definitely some like instant gratification. So
right. I'd say if you're doing like
um
if you're taking screenshots for your art station to show progress, definitely makes a nicer render, right?
absolutely. It definitely looks nicer for sure, just as a viewport display. So the pipeline, what did I do? So this is the final low poly version. I did a high poly version within Blender, brought it into ZBrush, and then brought it back into Blender using Go B, which is a free plugin that goes from ZBrush to Blender and back. So that was fantastic. I have here's the high poly, has some um, some text, some sculpting, um, like all this good stuff here. You can see it just how it looks much nicer. Again, Gabe, just to like look at it looks a little bit more professional. And so what I ended up doing was making the low poly version, like I already showed. Definitely, just trying to bake in a lot of those details, text and whatnot. I brought the low poly version. I did some unwrapping to it, and then I baked it in actually a separate program called Marmoset, and then I brought those maps over to Substance Painter. Last weekend I did last weekend and this weekend I did a bunch of painting, and this is what we have now. Let's show the material preview, and we
Oh,
have a
that's awesome.
very rusted out fire hydrant. So one of the really cool things about Blender is, especially with Blender Eevee, is that its viewport capabilities are pretty fantastic. You can get this is real time. This is the material preview. The shortcut to that is just pressing the Z, and you have the material preview. This is the solid view, the solid shade. We have the rendered view, which is, this is the um, view I think with cycles right now. So so this is what it's going to look like with rendered. I just built a plane and some lights and some shadows and stuff. So it's looking pretty rusted out. But then here's the material preview, and this is with Blender Eevee. And yeah, this was a ton of fun. Um, learned a lot, but this is, the game asset version of this. Let's look at the wireframe. You can kind of see like what the wireframe is doing.
So just to
So
pick your brain a little bit. So
sure.
we didn't cover like the UV unwrappings or anything like that. I'm assuming that was done in Blender as well.
No, not for this project. That's one of the things that I wanted to get to a finished version. My goal for this particular project was Blender modeling. There's
Okay.
only so much that my brain can do at one time. So I wanted to get the high poly done in Blender because for me, modeling is what it's what I love the most about 3D, just making objects. But
Right.
um, what I am going to do is learn more about Blender's unwrapping tools, which from what I've seen are like pretty awesome. I did have to um, do some unwrapping during the making of this because there were some challenges with this. Oh, looks like it crashed to desktop there. So
Oh
let's.
no.
Well, that's 3D. That's Blender.
Yeah, go
uh,
Blender. We're
um,
getting you back.
yeah, we'll just get this.
You got that cool
So,
desktop, so it works.
yep, it's not my drawing, so hopefully it isn't.
So what did you use to unwrap?
Oh, so I use a program called Rhizome UV, and it's a separate little application that takes the FBX files. And so so there was a ton of figuring out of like how to get the FBX like over to Rhizome to work. So one of the issues that I ran into with the export of the FBX files was that there are sometimes, and this was the culprit that gave me the issues, is that um, so I built the low poly and then I built the high poly, or not, I didn't build it, but then so then once I built the entire low poly, let's hide the ground, let's hide the lights, let's hide the cameras. The goal is to get everything selected and then to export this entire thing as a single FBX file so that so that you can then go into it and get it all unwrapped, because this is gonna be one texture sheet.
Right.
When I was doing that, I was getting some errors and I couldn't quite figure out why. So I had this little like FBX. You go and you choose a spot, FBX. It was FBX low. It has, here is the export features, and what would happen is I would export the FBX, and then I would get this like little error message that said some part didn't want to export. So the solution that I found was that there are sometimes, uh, like if it doesn't, sometimes if an object does not have UVs, it just doesn't export correctly.
Oh,
So what the fix was, I think is it all to you or just you? Just you. Oh, I forget already.
so does
But
Blender not auto assign you UVs when it starts?
no, like it had UVs, but they were really crazy. They were just like all over the place. And so what I ended up doing was doing a simple box map. Um, oh, you. So let's see, object. I've already forgotten what the shortcuts were, but the fix was just to do a box map unwrap on this object, and then that solved the
No, it
issue.
fixed it.
So
So is
what
Rhizome, is that a software you use at your work, or is that just something you've come across?
No, it's something I've come across. This is how it looks, and makes things really really automatic. Doing edge loops, doing cuts, and then doing some like automatic unwraps. You can do groups of shells and islands, and then you can also uh, do for like bigger characters. Um, you
Like
can do
like pelting?
multiple UV shells and tiles to oh man, yeah. So it is fantastic. So let's just load something I've done here
Well, that's
before.
cool. I'm interested to check out different. I'm interested to see how Blender's unwrapping goes because do you remember
Yeah.
Hedis UV?
Yes, I mean that was one of the yes,
And
absolutely.
I don't
That's
hear about it very much. And it used to be like I had to use that, and then I just got used to Maya's unwrapping tools that it was just easier just to stay within program and not jump around.
yeah, and from what I've understood and from what I've seen, Blender has some really great UV tools. And so one of the biggest benefits I think about Blender as well, like is the community building tools and add-ons to make things
Work like
much
other tools.
faster.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely want to get deeper into a couple of major features about
yeah.
Blender. One is their UV tools, and then actually I want to get into their rigging tools. Um, my current other side project is a dinosaur, and so what I was actually going to do once I get it, once I get that to a spot where I can bring it into Blender, I was actually going to rig it, do some weight painting, and maybe do like a small animation with it,
Yeah, that'd be
or do
cool.
like a cool pose,
Little
um,
walk cycle.
a walk cycle, or like an idle animation. Because what's so crazy about Blender is that it can do it all. It can absolutely do it all.
Yeah, I'm kind of taking notes as we discuss. Like, I mean, the lighting, obviously, texturing, just even UV unwrapping. I mean, those are good like show notes for like topics that would be worth mentioning. And we talk about this and going forward is you're doing these awesome big projects, and I love hearing about them. But I might focus like on really small projects where I can just teach myself things in bite-sized chunks. Like, hey,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to learn how to extrude an edge today. And, that may take an hour, but,
But that's the fun of it, right? I mean, that's what makes it fun, is just learning all those new tools. Um, yeah. So I definitely think for our next show, one of the things that like I'm going to learn about is maybe some UV unwrapping. But the other thing that I've been learning lately about Blender is there are some really cool concepting tools with booleans. I know that there's a with Blender, the way the boolean tools are next level, and being able to use those as just making quick high poly complex objects has been really, really cool, at least from what I've seen.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, that would be fun. That'd be fun to check out. Like even doing a deep dive. Hey, here's what I learned about Booleans this week, and let's try a bunch of different options.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And you and I, so just spitballing, thinking aloud is like you and I could do those kind of days where we show our projects, but then we also just open up a blank screen and say, hey, I really want to go over this thing for 5-10 minutes. And as we go, what we could do even is play that entire episode, but we could chop out those 10 minutes and then put those as like in a tutorial section on the Noob Show.
That'd be great. Yeah, 100%. Especially with things that we learn that make our lives faster and easier and just more fun with whatever new tool that we've learned about Blender. Because there's so many crazy things that people are coming up with, that are coming up with. So yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So what was Gabe, what was the project that you were trying to work on?
Okay, so my plan, and I actually made this twice. So I haven't done nothing. Actually, in my spare time, because for anyone just coming in and checking this out, get a little bit more to know a little bit more about us. We do have this pandemic going on, so I am working at home. I've got 5 kids and a full-time job, and so I have these little nuggets of time that I can use. So my project for Blender, and this is still the one I plan on doing, and it's not super new, but it's I'm gonna do one of the Among Us characters, and I wanted to take that kind of start to finish, because when really, if I stick to the traditional Among Us character, it's just kind of flat shaded. Maybe I look up how to do an outline render in Blender. That might be cool. But just to keep it really simple, that would teach me basic modeling, modeling to smooth. I could keep him low poly without having to bake, and just paint the textures on, or even just do simple. I wouldn't even have to UV unwrap a character like that, right? If I didn't want to.
Yeah, there's a lot of tutorials about like the Ghibli style rendering method that you may.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what you're getting at.
Yep. So I think that's still my plan. I've actually done and this is me over planning, Mike. I've done 2 different models in Maya just to get myself prepped for it, which I really should do is just hop into Blender and just do it.
What do you think is the biggest obstacle that you face when trying to get into Blender?
Navigation and understanding the tools, like hands down. Like I understand 3D modeling, and part of it's I've been working in a single software package for 10 years. Well, actually, man, more like 20, right? Since we were in school.
Yeah.
And so it's old habits, and it's the initial frustration of learning a new tool. And I think it's similar to like ZBrush, right? As I think when you teach someone ZBrush for the first time, it doesn't feel right. You're more controlling things with a pen, and it's very intuitive from an artist standpoint. But just coming into it, it's like, what? You like stroke to zoom in. It's really frustrating. But once you've done it long enough, you don't even know what you're doing. It's just second nature.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's a little bit like learning a new tool can be like learning a new language, and it's daunting, and all you really need to do is just spend some time in it.
I think that's 100% true. And one of the challenges that like I have faced and continue to face is that when you work in 2 different softwares that do very similar things with different shortcut methods, sometimes your brain just cross wires, and that in itself can be really frustrating.
Yep.
So it's one of those things where you want to just gain momentum and just stay in one for a while, just so that you can kind of get some things done.
Yeah, and that's why. And this is kind of a tangent, but so I speak fluent Filipino, which is very similar to Spanish, and I was trying to teach myself Spanish, so I would start speaking Spanish to a Spanish speaker, and my brain would already automatically slip back into Tagalog. And so you'd notice someone's head kind of turn sideways and be like, what are you doing? And so that it's kind of like that a little bit. So you try to do things the old way, and it's a learning curve, but I'm going to do it.
you will do it because you're awesome, and we have faith in you, Checkpoint Professor.
Oh,
So, yeah, so that's where I'm at. Next week I want to have just some finished basic renders of this fully fleshed out fire hydrant. It's been a ton of fun. Learned, I've gone through the whole game asset production process with this, but using Blender instead of 3D Studio Max. So that's I've learned a ton with that, and then start planning out, the next smallish project and like the next big one. I'm thinking, again, the dinosaur, but I'm thinking like a bigger environment. There's just so many things that have been
oh, I'm excited. No,
rolling
I'm thinking grandiose like that too, Mike. I'm thinking like a sunflower in a potted plant in a pot, you know.
around. One that talks though, right? One that
Yes,
is
maybe a nice tree.
yeah.
I'm expanding my horizons here.
Well, one of the cool things about these fully fleshed out 3D packages too is that, we could even just try and do some like simple simulations, which can build,
Oh,
build and build and build.
yeah,
And
that'd be fun.
I mean, we could again get into sculpting. I know that Blender just had a huge sculpting update so that it can handle a lot more polygons, which is, ZBrush that can handle millions and up to actually billions of polygons with some of its tool set. So it's cool that um, so it's really cool that uh, that 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 those capabilities are being brought into Blender, cloth, brushes, all that like great stuff. So it's a whole wide world out there that I think we're jumping back into. So that's gonna be fun.
There we go. I'm shrinking you back down. Awesome. So
I'm
that,
shrunk.
yeah, there you go. Well, we're now. I think you're still a little bit more prominent than I am, but that's okay. It's okay. No, that's awesome. So anybody who watching, welcome. I think that's a wrap for our first show back. I'm really excited to get going back on this mic. It's been really fun just chatting with an old buddy once every week or 2 weeks. So for me, it's not only about learning Blender, but it's also meeting friends. So
Yeah, absolutely. And if the community has any, requests or ideas for us to kind of uh, butt our heads against and try and learn, put them in the comments.
yeah.
Like and subscribe, hit that bell,
Yeah.
whatever the kids are saying these days.
Well, yeah, well, and even if nothing else, if you do enjoy what you're hearing, we would very much appreciate just a like. It helps let Google know that this is something that somebody likes, and it helps spread the good word of Blender 3D. We're just out proselyting, we're just trying to help souls
Yes. Yep.
learn about the good word of Blender.
Yeah, in the world of 3D,
Yeah.
it's totally expanding. There's a lot more people getting into it, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of demand for Blender. So thank you so much for watching Checkpoint Professor and
Melting Face 3D.
Melting Face 3D. Links down below if you want to check out our Twitch account. We stream lots of stuff regularly. So for one of us. Well, Mike, I think you're mostly 3D, right?
Yeah, that's just what I'm into.
Yeah.
But Checkpoint Town, you're playing some Mario Maker, you're playing some video games, you're giving some fantastic level analysis.
Yep, indie games, man. And this semester is going to be chock full of all sorts of goodness. So thank you so much for stopping by, and we will check you next time.
Yep, next time. Thanks, Gabe.